Glory to Christ, who is proclaimed to the world. Glory from all who believe in him. Alleluia.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. After feeding the 5,000 with the 5 loaves and fish, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side, to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. After saying farewell to them, he went up on the mountain to pray. When evening came, the boat was out on the sea, and Jesus was alone on the land. When he saw that they were straining at the oars against the adverse wind, he came towards them early in the morning, walking on the sea. He intended to pass them by, but when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost, and they cried out, for they all saw him and were terrified. But immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." Then Jesus got into the boat with them, and the wind ceased, and they were all utterly astounded, for they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. The Gospel of the Lord. We are still celebrating the Epiphany. Like I explained to us earlier in the week, that within the Christmas season, the liturgy of the church gives us a full 8 days to celebrate the Epiphany. The Epiphany is so important because that is the basis for worshiping Jesus. Epiphany simply means how we originally come to know that Jesus should be worshipped, that Jesus is true God and true man. Now, if we traveled back, say 2,000 years ago, and put ourselves among the Jewish people, the people of Nazareth, the people of Bethsaida, the people of Capernaum, they knew Jesus. They knew Joseph. They knew Mary. They knew that he was living in Nazareth. They saw him walking around like a normal guy. How did they get to that point when they decided that this man is truly the Son of God? How does one get to that point to start to worship Jesus? So all the readings within the Epiphany period, starting from last Sunday until next Sunday, which is the baptism of the Lord, all the gospel readings will be helping us to understand how people got to that point and how we too having read those miracle stories, can come to that full understanding to profess Jesus as true God and true man. And it was not easy. Like we read in today's gospel, the disciples, it says their hearts were still hardened because it was not easy to get to that point of worshiping Jesus as God. And so in our gospel reading today from Mark chapter 6, starting from verse 45, two indicators tells us that Jesus is God. The first one is walking on the sea, the perilous, stormy waters. He was walking. Now, we are not talking about frozen lake where somebody can walk or drive over a frozen lake in the winter. Our text says that the wind and the storm was adverse, and the boat in which the disciples were was in trouble. And then Jesus started walking on the sea. At first, they thought he was a ghost. Now, when we're talking about this text, Epiphany text wants us to see the power of Jesus, the power of God over the waters. We compare this text to Exodus chapter 14, when the people, God parted the Red Sea, and the people walked on dry shore. They didn't walk on waters, but we saw the power that God had over the waters, the sea. It's a sea. And they walked through it. But the power that God had to be able to calm the stormy waters and part it is the same power that Jesus has to be able to calm the stormy sea. Our text here says, when Jesus got into the boat, the storm on the sea ceased. Now, that is a supernatural power. That is not an ordinary kind of power. The second indicator that tells us that Jesus is God, it's how he introduced himself to the disciples. Our text says, when he came close to them, he said to them, "Do not be afraid. It is I." He said to the disciples, "Take courage. Do not be afraid. It is I." Now, when we transliterate it, because this is a transliteration from the Greek, which in Greek they call this the ego eimi. Ergo eimi. Now, ergo eimi translates the Hebrew Yahweh. That is the name of God. Now, when we read the book of Exodus, chapter 3, verse 14, when Moses saw the burning bush and Moses went there, and God introduced himself to Moses as I am. That is the name of God, I am. So when Jesus introduced himself and he says, "Take heart, do not be afraid. It is I am." Now, just try to imagine how shocked his disciples will have been that he will introduce himself as I am. Now, what Jesus is saying is here, when he says, do not be afraid, it is I am that is with you. That is what we call Emmanuel. You know, Luke's gospel, Matthew's gospel will say his name is Emmanuel. Emmanuel means God is with us. Jesus tells them, I am present. I am with you. Do not be afraid. Even though you are in the storm, I am here. I am present. And so today's text is one of the Epiphany texts, and it helps us to also not harden our hearts. Like our text says, Jesus just finished feeding the 5,000. And our text says they still did not understand how powerful he is about the loaves, because Jesus did what God did in the desert, again in Exodus chapter 16, that was Exodus chapter 16, when manna fell from heaven and fed the multitude. Only God could do that. And then with 5 loaves, Jesus fed 5,000 men. And our text here says, they were with him when he fed the 5,000, and they still did not understand that he is a divine being. He's true man and he's true God. He has that power. And their hearts were still hardened. So within this whole period, as we continue to explicate the gospel, we are also called not to harden our hearts, to see Jesus as divinity, to see him as the Son of God. But the culmination of this revelation will come on Sunday at the baptism of the Lord.